Well, the Ministry of External Affairs has now issued a statement and made its position clear in the Galwan Valley area. Ministry of External Affairs has said that the position with regard to the Galwan Valley area has been historically clear. Attempts by the Chinese side to now advance exaggerated and untenable claims with regard to the line of actual control, they are not acceptable. They are not in accordance with the China's own position in the past. We'll try and go across to our executive editor Abhishek Kapoor in a short while from now. But remember, there's been a lot of flip-flop that we've essentially seen from the Chinese side also, given the fact that as far as Galwan Valley is concerned, Chinese all this while have been maintaining that that's their area. On the other hand, as far as India is concerned, remember the multiple statements that have been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs over the last few weeks clearly goes on to indicate as to how it's because of the Chinese aggression, it's how they have basically crossed over the line of actual control. Let me go across to our executive editor Abhishek Kapoor for the latest. Abhishek, as far as India is concerned, India has made it absolutely clear that what we are looking at as far as China is concerned, it's untenable. Their position is something that cannot be accepted at any point in time, and they've been very clear about it over almost multiple statements that have been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs.
Well, Shravan, yes, what was happening was in the last 48 hours, the Chinese were trying to play some mind games. Some were outlandishly stupid, some were kindergarten stuff. And that is why record had to be put straight. I think India's restraint was misread by Beijing. And that's why this strong statement that has come, which clearly states that Galwan Valley is India's territory. It has been historically so. It has been historically so as per Chinese records also. And what China is doing now is trying to change the status quo and trying to change its own records, which is cartographic aggression. And it is not going to be tolerated. It is untenable and unacceptable. So I believe, I would say the MEA took its time to really come out with this statement because, as I said, the Chinese were playing some mind games over the last 48 hours. But with this statement, the record has been put straight. Galwan Valley is named, or the Galwan River is named after a man who was an Indian citizen, whose family continues to remain citizens of India. They are based out of Leh. We have interviewed them. They are proud Indians. And so this cannot be Chinese territory in any manner. And China is bluffing its way in its cartographic aggression. And this statement really calls that bluff out, is how I would put it. Shravan.
Well, Abhishek, there's also been a lot of talk about what the Prime Minister essentially has said in his statement after the all-party meeting. In fact, a lot of Chinese social media handles have also been quoting, saying that there has been no incursion whatsoever. This has been the aggression from the Indian side. That too has been once again clarified by the Ministry of External Affairs, because as far as their statements go, their statement points out to only one thing. It's the Chinese aggression. Repeatedly, multiple statements that have been issued by the Ministry of External Affairs.
Oh, well, exactly. In fact, if you go point by point through this statement that has come out, it clearly says that while India has been patrolling the Galwan Valley patrol point 14, 15, 17 for decades and more, and the Chinese have accepted it. It's only this time in May that they obstructed the Indian side, which led to the build-up and the subsequent clash on June 15. In fact, before that, on June 6, an understanding was reached. Even that was breached, clearly suggesting that the Chinese had a plan, about which the MEA statement after the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke to his Chinese counterpart reflected that what the Chinese did was premeditated. And subsequent to that, we have seen that again the External Affairs Minister has spoken to his Chinese counterpart and Wang Yi and made it amply clear that what the Chinese are doing is unacceptable in terms of altering the status quo of LAC pending the talks on the border dispute between the special representatives from both the sides. And then the statement concludes by saying that we expect that the Chinese side will sincerely follow the understanding reached between the respective foreign ministers to ensure peace and tranquility in the border. Essentially what had happened was that because Chinese came with a plan, and wanted to change status quo on the ground, going against their own historical records, going against their own historical position, essentially moving the goalposts. This is something Chinese have been doing all across the frontier, and even in the South China Sea and the East China Sea and with the Mekong countries. I believe this was part of a Chinese strategy that has been in place for quite some time. The only difference this time is that India, like Doklam in 2017, really obstructed, put its foot down, and that is something which has really riled the Beijing establishment, and that's why this belligerence. So earlier it tones down, and Chinese understand that this mechanism of or this strategy of cartographic aggression followed by trying to change status quo on the ground unilaterally is not going to work. I think that is the message that this MEA statement now carries. As I said, little belated because the Chinese were playing mind games for the last 48 hours. But this statement should really put to rest all the facts as they stand.
Well, Abhishek, just to put this into perspective also, going back to what really happened on 15th of June, the fact that there was a physical clash between the Indian Army and the Chinese PLA, that was essentially because there was no disengagement on the Chinese part. The fact that they had basically moved into Indian territory, put up an Arctic tent, refused to take back those tents, that essentially led to the scuffle. Today we have seen multiple sort of versions coming out from the Chinese side saying that the tent that we were basically talking about was very much within the Chinese territory. Could you also put this into perspective?
Well, Shawad, that is exactly what I mean when I say cartographic aggression and the Chinese trying to change historical positions, trying to change their own positions. So they were trying to pitch in a tent which is actually on the other side of LOC, as the MEA statement makes it clear, which is on our side, and that is why it had to be removed. Colonel Santosh Babu was absolutely in his right to dismantle that tent, and then faced with the Chinese aggression, which led to the clash that happened and led to the loss of life, casualties on both the sides. Remember, it's not just India that has suffered the loss of life of its men and the martyrdom of its soldiers, but even the Chinese. With the difference that we are a democracy, we have the courage to admit it. The Chinese don't have the courage to even admit that. Having said that, I think this is a point-by-point rebuttal about the claims over Galwan Valley, and that is the most important takeaway. I think in unambiguous terms, the Ministry of External Affairs has made it clear that Galwan Valley is part of India. Historically, it has been part of India. It has never been contested as part of India by the Chinese till the month of May this year, and that is why this cartographic aggression is not going to be accepted. It is untenable, and earlier the Chinese understand and pull back, the better.
Well, thank you very much, Abhishek, for putting this into perspective. Ministry of External Affairs making it absolutely clear that the claim that has been made by Chinese as far as Galwan Valley is concerned is absolutely untenable and unacceptable.